Welcome back to the third segment of the seventh lecture on virtue ethics, and in this time I'm going to talk about community membership and relationship to virtue ethics. Remember, virtues are stable character traits, positive with a positive moral valence, that enable human beings to cooperate and flourish in communities of people with similar traits. Now, at an abstract level, all communities share virtues like courage and honesty and so on. But different societies and different communities, they have different interpretations of what it is to be courageous or what it is sometimes to even be honest. Think, for example, of a warrior society like the ancient Greeks of Homer when they were trying to conquer Troy, or think of an Apache society in 18th, 19th century United States. These were warrior societies, and they had a particular view of physical courage. Now, in a market society, that sort of physical courage, I mean, it may be admired, but it will never be really developed or needed because well, people just aren't fighting as much. I mean, and perhaps courage will have a different meaning. Courage may mean trust in one's own judgment and commitment, even when the markets are falling. One hangs on to one's shares because one is courageous and thinks they will go, the share will go back up, or one pushes forward with a deal that one knows to be the right deal for your company, even though everybody disagrees. This shows a certain level of courage, and it's a different sort of courage than the courage that the people exemplified in a warrior society. Consequently, different communities, because they have different ideas of virtue, sometimes have different interpretations of human flourishing. And they also inculcate different virtues. So the virtues that you have, they're going to help you flourish in a certain society, and that society at the same time will valorize those as being the way that you should flourish. It gives you, the community gives you a way of being of leading a flourishing and objectively happy life. And so we can imagine these virtues, which play a role in social cooperation. They function in market societies. You can imagine a different set of virtues in a religious society. To live in a monastery, you're going to need to develop different sorts of virtues. To live in a warrior society, again, different virtues. And even within a market society like ours, you're going to have the virtues of the business people. But then there's going to be different virtues, maybe for people who join the army, the armed forces, and maybe even different virtues for people who make a living in the education field. And then again, within the businesses, there's different communities. There's the community that's, the Google community, all the people that work at Google and depend on it, the Exxon community, and ... There's all these corporations themselves. Pardon me, become communities in which people live. They have different interpretations of the virtues, and they enable people to flourish. And flourishing may be a little bit different in each of these communities. So there's a kind of, if you'll excuse me the pun, virtuous circle going on here. As we've seen, the possession of virtues actually enables social cooperation. So virtues enable social cooperation, and social cooperation enables communities the community itself to flourish, everybody to flourish in the community, holds the community together. And the community itself inculcates and sustains the virtues that it requires to function as a cooperative venture for mutual advantage. So there's a circle going on here. Virtue supports community, and community inculcates and sustains and trains and educates people in certain virtues. Now, these community memberships and these virtues that people have may produce certain obligations, and this is perhaps where this intersects with business ethics particularly. We're familiar with obligations to everybody else, and these are usually non-voluntary. You don't choose. People have human rights, and it doesn't matter whether you choose this or not, you still have to respect their rights. Those are unchosen obligations. If you're utilitarian, you have an unchosen obligation to promote the greater good. You can also get obligations to specific people, and these generally and most of what we've been thinking about are voluntary, right? You make promises to other people, and that produces an obligation that you have to them, but you choose voluntarily to make that promise. So most of how we think about our obligations to specific people is as voluntary obligations taken on by the person by making a promise or signing a contract or whatever. Now, there may, though, be special obligations to community members because of the virtues that you have to have within that community. So loyalty is one. Loyalty is a virtue that is promoted with inside the, it's a virtue. It helps the community stay together. The community as itself promotes loyalty to itself, and at the same time promotes the sort of forms of social cooperation that will result in a flourishing community and flourishing community members. But loyalty will end up with producing obligations. Loyalty, just special obligations that you have to the members of the community of which you are a member. And these obligations, which are to specific people, you're loyal to the other members of your community, but you're not loyal. You don't have to be loyal, generally to everybody in the United Nations. These generate specific obligations to specific people, and they're non-voluntary. You don't choose always to, sometimes you choose to be a member of a community, but you don't choose to become a member of your family generally. You're just brought up there, and your family is a small community. You may choose to become, to work for Google, but if you do so, then you acquire a certain sort of obligations to other people within that community based on your role often in the community. If you're a manager, you have certain roles to certain obligations to your higher ups, to the people that work for you, to the company, for the contracts you sign. So but they're taken on, maybe originally they're taken on voluntarily, but they become part of your obligation as a member of the community. They are probably unwritten, they are unexplicit, but they are expectations that people will have. And these produce the non-voluntary obligations to specific fit people that come from community membership. And this can play a role, for example, if you have often firms become members of communities. They set up in a particular town. Many people work for them. They support the community town that they are in. The town supports them. This results in obligations of community membership. A virtuous firm will accept those obligations, and the pay-up time is sometimes when, maybe the firm says, maybe I should move offshore, go offshore because production would be cheaper. And maybe you can even make a financial utilitarian argument why that will produce the best outcome for everybody. But you still mustn't forget the obligations of community membership that firm acquired by being a member of a part of that town. Okay, so here is a little question for you. Goes back to maybe to the last segment. It says, which is the following is the best account of human flourishing in virtue ethics? So pause the video, make your choice, and we'll review the answers. Okay, let's have a look here. Flourishing in virtue ethics, objective happiness. We're not talking about net pleasure. Right? We're talking about whether you're leading your life well in some other sense. And though becoming rich will help you acquire pleasures, etc., make your life easier, that is not what you're looking for in virtue ethics. It's part of maybe, if you're being well off, maybe your life will go better objectively. Well, that's true, but that's not the sole goal here. Cultivating the virtues appropriate to one's community is definitely the sort of thing that is an account of human flourishing in virtual ethics. Cultivating virtues, remember, constitute a flourishing life. And the virtues are, as I said, in part determined by the community and the community expectations, and also result in obligations by yourself to other members of your community. This is in the virtue ethics perspective. let's just cover all the bases. So accidentally becoming famous in one's community. Well, fame, possibly being admirable perhaps is a virtue, being the sort of person who's admired by others, but accidentally becoming famous is not a character trait. It's not the sort of flourishing that virtue ethics would necessarily extol. All right, I'll see you for the fourth segment in a few minutes.